Hi, Stephen from Own or Disown. Well, it's nearly the end of 2020 and I've reviewed 34 laptops, which is quite amazing to be honest. So what I've decided to do was put a list together of what, my personal favorites and the worst ones that I have actually reviewed. Now, of course, these are the ones I've tested myself, so you're bound to have some ones which you think are better or worse even. Make sure you put those in the comments below. Also, I've got a sponsor on this video. It's Wondershare's PDFelement, and if you know my channel well, I very rarely do any sponsored videos. So this is a testament of how much I do actually like this software. I've tried it, and I certainly do quite like it. Now, PDFelement 8 is 3 times faster than its predecessor when opening, converting, or editing PDF files. PDFelement is the best Acrobat Alternative and simple PDF editor which can truly maximize your document productivity. It is available for mobile devices using iOS or Android, as well as macOS and Windows. On a Windows or a Mac machine, you can use optical character recognition to scan a PDF document to make it either searchable or editable. This works best with a printed document rather than a handwritten one. I actually found it very useful when searching for text. You can also easily add a watermark, a digital signature, or a stamp, as well as Bates numbering, which does make it ideal for legal, medical, or business use. Now, other powerful tools include being able to add an image and resize it, which is useful for adding photographs to your PDF, as well as being able to convert it to Word, PowerPoint, or Excel. You can also highlight details of the document and extract them to Excel. Now, naturally, you can easily add text, comments, or even use the pen tool to draw, or even actually use a digital pen or an Apple Pencil if you want to actually sign a document. Now, I do find that extremely useful. What I also liked was the ability to enter a link to the document, such as your website, and the ability to work on large batch files to save time. As for security, PDFelement allows you to assign permissions to many of the editable options, so you have control over what items can be changed. I found that the software worked equally well on a MacBook, and although the options were limited on mobile, you can still highlight text, draw, add a shape such as an arrow, or add a comment or even a stamp. You also can have 100 gigabytes of cloud storage, allowing you to work on any document where you have internet access. Now, currently, Wondershare has a 50% off sale, so I do encourage you to visit the site with the links below. So let's start off with what I think is the best budget laptop under $700, and this has to be the Acer Nitro 5. You can buy the i5 model for $650 and the Ryzen 5 4600H for about $670 with the GTX 1650 GPU. The base model will only have 8GB of RAM in single channel, so I do recommend adding a second stick, plus only it has a 256GB SSD, but you do have an open 2.5-inch bay to add more storage. I liked how Acer switched to cooling from having a single heatsink with the CPU and the GPU sharing 2 heat pipes to a more traditional cooling setup with the CPU and the GPU actually having a separate heat pipe each. And as a result, it did run very cool when gaming. Granted, the 4600H is a great CPU for low thermals, and I think the i5 will be kept in check too, especially since Acer does offer fan control. The 6Hz panel on the base model was okay as well, reasonably bright at 273 nits, and that had a contrast of 1020:1. Sure, a 144Hz panel would be the best, but it is fine. Now, the keyboard has red backlighting. The 4600H sips power, and all of the laptops I've tested with that CPU have got over 8 hours in my battery life tests. However, the Nitro 5 wasn't my favourite Ryzen 5 4600H laptop. That award must go to the Lenovo Legion 5, which retails for around about $870 with the GTX 1650 Ti or $810 for the GTX 1650 model. Now, Best Buy has the i7 GTX 1660 Ti model on sale at the moment for only $799, which is $300 off, so that is a bargain. The Legion 5 must be the most requested laptop on my channel, and that's for good reason. It has a nice clean look to it, and will be suitable for both student and business users alike. Unlike the previous Wi-Fi 40, it still has the port icons on the rear hinge, but only the Legion 7 actually has them lit up. The keyboard is very good and is backlit white by default. I particularly liked how easy it is to change power modes and see what mode you're in by pressing the FN and Q button. An LED on the power button changes colour as you switch between the modes. I found the speakers to be good, and a 120Hz panel was fine for gaming. Its brightness was on the low side, especially as you lowered brightness. 50% was at 31 nits, for example. Still, even without fan control, the thermals on the 4600H model were good with decent fan acoustics. Now, if you did opt for the 4800H model, you would see an increase in gaming performance and also a slight increase in thermals, but the temperatures were still below what you would typically see with an Intel i7 CPU. And that leads me to what I thought my favourite Ryzen laptop was. And, that has to go to the Legion 5 as well, if you can get the 144Hz panel and the larger 80 watt-hour battery, that is. Now, it was a close call between that and the HP Omen 15. The Omen 15 did a lot of things right. It looked pretty sharp and it cooled quite well too. I would typically get just over 5 hours with a 4800H and the 70 watt-hour battery. The 144Hz FreeSync panel was good at 94% of sRGB and 316 nits. Plus, for me, having an SD card reader was a big positive. But the front of it was quite sharp, and the lid did have a lot of flex. The speakers were not as good as the Legion 5 either. Now, was there a bad Ryzen laptop? Unfortunately, there was, and that award must go to the HP Pavilion 15 Gaming. The unit is available for $699 at Best Buy, but unfortunately, its very poor screen makes it poor value at that price, especially when you consider you needed to add an extra stick of RAM to get the best out of it. It did run cool and very quiet, which are big pluses for me, but I just could not get away from having a laptop with such poor viewing angles. Even head-on, it looked washed out with its extremely low contrast and bad ghosting performance. Now, how about the worst Intel system I reviewed in 2020? Well, that award has to go to the Surface Book 3, which won my worst 2-in-1 laptop award. At the time of the review, my unit had an i7 1065G7 GTX 1660 Ti Max Q with a 32GB of RAM, and this cost a staggering $2,800. The CPU only has 4 cores and often performed worse than the previous i7 in the Surface Book 2. Now, it did have decent battery life at 9 hours 20 minutes, but its GTX 1660 Ti Max Q GPU runs at about 60 watts and performs the same as the GTX 1060 in the Surface Book 2, so you're actually paying more for the same performance. And Microsoft doesn't throw in a pen either or have a Thunderbolt 3 port, so yeah, I don't recommend it at its current price. Other 2-in-1 laptops I reviewed included the HP NV360 15Z, which is a 15-inch model powered by the AMD Ryzen 7 4700U, and that goes for just over $700. For $600, you can get the Ryzen 5 4500U, and I think this is the best value 2-in-1 I tested. I still got 6 hours of battery life at 40% brightness, and it had a fingerprint reader. The main downside was that to gain access inside, you had to remove the feet to remove the screws underneath, and you only have a single M.2 SSD. Gaming-wise, the integrated Vega GPU handles games at 720p low settings well, so I think you get quite a lot for the price. Now, I currently do have the Yoga 9i, the 15-inch and the 14-inch in-house, and I think they may well have been vying for the top spot, but as it stands, I do like the HP Spectre 13T, and that starts at just over $1,000. Now, it could also handle some light gaming at low settings. The star of the laptop was the 4K AMOLED panel. It was very bright, it was very sharp, and it had excellent colours. And should you wish, there is a 1080p WLED panel. And unlike the Surface Book, HP provides a nice portfolio cover, a small 65-watt USB-C power brick, and a pen with some spare nibs. Now, the only downside, in my opinion, is that the RAM was soldered on, so you need to configure it accordingly. So what was my favourite 17-inch laptop this year? There were 3 contenders here. The HP Pavilion 17T, which had a 16Hz panel, a 6-core i7 9750H and GTX 1660 Ti Max Q graphics for under $1,000. There's also the Electronics RP17 with a Ryzen 7 4800H and RTX 2060, plus a 144Hz panel for $1,250. And finally, the Electronics Max 17 with the i7 10875H CPU, 2070 Super and 240Hz panel. I think for those on a tighter budget, the RP17 is a no-brainer. Now, the 4800H in it is the fastest one I have tested, actually even beating out all of the i7 10875H CPUs. And the RTX 2060 also boosts up to 110 watts, so it's a very capable machine. This all plastic build may not look or feel the best, but the 144Hz panel was very good, and although the battery life was not great at 3 hours, for $1,250 I think it is still decent value. But I must admit, my favourite was the Mac 17. Its mag alloy chassis was clean looking and it was really solid, while still being very lightweight at about 4.7 pounds. Electronics configured the 8-core 10875H to maintain a high boost clock, making it one of the fastest I have tested. Just shy of an undervolted i9 to be honest, and they give you great options in the BIOS which include undervolting and changing RAM speeds. Although the 2070 Super is not available right now, the regular 2070 Max B and the 144Hz panel just sells for $1,600 on Amazon right now, and I think that is a great deal. Finally, what is my favourite top 15-inch gaming laptop? Well, the contenders here have to be between the Legion 7i, the MSI GE66 and the Electronics Mech 15 G3. The Legion 7i is much improved over their last year's Y740. They slimmed it down, the typing ergonomics was much improved because they removed the left-hand macro keys and they made the power brick much smaller. It's an all aluminium build which was nice and solid. And although I have heard of reports about the hinges being weak, I had no issues with mine. The screen was super bright and vivid at 485 nits and 99% of sRGB. It had to be the best 144Hz display I had seen. Now the speakers were also good, and to top it off it had G-Sync in dedicated GPU mode, or after reboot you can maximize battery life in hybrid mode, which I saw 6 hours out of the 80 watt-hour battery. However, I thought the MSI GE66 and the Electronics Mech 15 G3 were better. I would have given the win to the GE66 by nature of its excellent performance. It cools really well, the chassis is nice and stiff, and when you access its advanced BIOS, you can change whatever you want. It has a 1080p webcam, which is rare these days, but its speakers were a bit tinny. Now there's no doubt that the RGB keyboard and light bar are the coolest out there. And you also have a huge 99 watt-hour battery, which should last you 6 to 7 hours if you use the mug switch and change it to hybrid mode. I liked it so much, I purchased the Dragon Shield limited edition, and although I do love it to bits, my 300Hz screen does exhibit a weird transparency thing going on, which I cannot seem to solve. I didn't notice this on the previous 300Hz panel I tested, nor have I heard about it on the 240Hz one, so it may just be my bad luck. So on that basis, plus the fact that the Mech 15 G3 has now been upgraded with either Advanced Optimus or a 165Hz QHD display, it has to win my top 2020 gaming laptop award. It has a great mechanical keyboard with 2mm of travel. The RGB is not as nice as the GE66, but it's a real pleasure to use, and the lid and keyboard deck are made out of mag alloy, but the bottom is made out of plastic, but it does still feel solid and it's scuff resistant. The Mech 15 G3 also has a mug switch allowing you to switch between the dedicated GPU, Intel only or hybrid mode. Now on the new version you also get Advanced Optimus, which gives you G-Sync and Optimus at the same time. Finally, you can have zero tearing and long battery life at the same time. Now I got about 7 hours of runtime from the 94 watt-hour battery in hybrid mode. Electronics uses the same high power limits which you saw on the Mac 17, so the i7 10875H is no slouch, and you can configure it all the way up to a 2080 Super Max Q. So without a doubt 2020 was an exciting year for laptops, but believe me, I think 2021 is going to be even better. We're going to get different panels, we're going to get more 16 to 10 aspect ratio panels, we're going to get 165Hz QHD panels, we're even going to get 360Hz panels, so that's going to be great. And of course, naturally we're going to get the new RTX 3000 series GPUs. I haven't heard much about the RDNA 2 ones, but we're certainly going to get a lot more laptops using AMD Zen 3 CPUs. So I think it's going to be a fantastic time for sure. And make sure to subscribe because I'm going to be covering it all during the CES coverage. Thanks for watching. Bye now.